Hello everyone, welcome to the next chapter of our Greek class. As you can see, this is chapter 5, Nouns of the first declension. It might seem a little bit strange, but yeah, we covered the second declension last week. And now we will be moving on to the first declension. As I mentioned last week, the reason why we do this is because the first declension is a bit more complicated than the second declension. Second declension, really all you have to do is learn one kind of paradigm. And the neuter, of course, is a separate one, but the neuter is closely related to the masculine and feminine. Masculine and feminine nouns in the second declension look exactly the same. And so it was a nice kind of introduction to the noun system, how that works, the four major cases, and what that looks like in a Greek sentence. So now let's go on to the first declension nouns. This entire chapter will pretty much just be talking about the forms of these nouns. There's not a whole lot more. I'm assuming that you have, you've looked at the chapter 4 material. You've gotten pretty well acquainted with the Greek cases, how they work. If you're not, please contact me and we can go over that. On that point, I'd like to actually schedule a time next week when we can meet together kind of face-to-face, maybe on a Zoom call. I just want to make sure that everybody is doing okay as we're moving into actual Greek sentences. I want to just see how your understanding is coming along. A lot of this stuff is very different from English, and so if that's kind of your baseline and where your understanding is, some of this can be a bit complicated and very different. So I will be contacting you about that, about what time is best. But we can schedule any time next week to talk about this. So first thing this week, hopefully you have gotten acquainted with the Greek cases and functions, and you can answer some of these questions and ideas. What are the four main Greek cases and their functions? Of course, there are the names of the Greek cases: nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative. And then, of course, how are they used in a sentence? And you've gotten some simple sentences by now. Hopefully you've been able to look at the exercises for chapter 4, and you've been able to look at how these work and what Greek sentences kind of look like. Okay, again, they're very different from English sentences, and so keep on working on this. Now let's go on then to the first declension nouns. First declension, the usage of this is exactly the same as the second declension. Okay, the only difference between these two are the forms, like what the nouns look like, and the kind of pattern, the endings, the way the endings change. Okay, otherwise, they will work exactly the same way in a sentence. Okay, first declension nouns, they have case, just like the second declension. They're the exact same cases. The cases work the same way. Okay, the only difference are in the way that they look and kind of the pattern of how they change. First declension, this is taught second. It's counterintuitive and silly, but the thing that you need to pay attention to here, and that you didn't need to pay attention to in the second declension, in chapter 4, is that you have to look at this letter that ends the noun stem. Okay, if you look at the dictionary/vocabulary form that you're given, and you take off that nominative singular ending, you're left with a noun stem. And you need to look at the letter that ends the noun stem, because that letter determines which of these patterns, kind of sub-patterns under the first declension, that these nouns fall into. Okay, the reason why the first declension is a bit more complicated than the second declension is that there are these sub-patterns that these words fit into, and the way that you determine that is the letter that ends the noun stem. All right, when we're talking about the differences between the first declension words, these kind of subcategories in the first declension, the next point there is that they are only in the singular. Okay, these differences only exist in the singular. The plural endings for the first declension are all the same. It's got 4 standard first declension plural endings. And if you've gotten the second declension endings down really well, the first declension plural endings, they look fairly similar, okay, or they change in the same kind of way. And yeah, learn the plural endings really well for the first declension because, again, those are fixed. They're standard across the entire first declension. If you ever see one of these words, say a form chart on a quiz or on a test, and I ask you for the forms of a first declension noun, you know that the plural endings, no matter what, if it's first declension, you know that the plural endings are the same set of those 4 endings in nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative plurals. Alright, so let's look at some of these words and get some practice in looking at what is the letter that ends the stem. Alright, we'll take a look at some words here. All of these are first declension words, and so have a look at the end of the stem. You're going to remove the nominative singular ending, and in the first number of these words, that will simply entail dropping off the vowel that ends the word. So look at hemera, the first word there. Hemera means day, and you drop off the alpha, which is your nominative singular ending, and you're left with the letter rho. Okay, that's the end of the stem. The next word, doxa, again, drop off the alpha, and you're left with the end letter xi. Next word is phone. On this one, there is an eta at the end of the word, but that is the nominative singular ending again. So drop off the eta, and you're left with an end letter of nu. Next word is exousia. Exousia. It's a word for power or authority. And on this one, drop off the alpha, and you're left with the stem letter iota. Next word is zoe, a word for life. Seen in words like zoology. Okay, but there you drop off the eta, and you're left with the stem letter omega. Now these next 2 words, they look a bit different, right? Prophetes and neanias, those are both nominative singular forms, but these ones you will notice have a sigma on the end instead of a vowel. And with these, the nominative singular ending is the vowel and the sigma. The reason why the sigma is on there is because both of these words are examples of masculine first declension words. Alright, these are a category kind of off on their own, but they work the same way as the feminine nouns. Alright, so look at prophetes. Okay, drop off the last 2 letters of this one, the eta and the sigma, and you're left with the stem, which ends then in a tau. And that last word, neanios, drop off the alpha and the sigma, and you're left with the stem, which then ends in the letter iota. Alright, there are no neuter first declension nouns. Alright, most of your first declension nouns are feminine words, and then there are a few, I think the book mentions there are like 112 masculine first declension nouns. Alright, and you can tell what those are, at least in the dictionary form, by looking at the end of the stem, and they'll look a little bit different. This is not like the second declension where the masculine and feminine nouns look exactly the same. This one, there is a slight difference between the masculine and feminine, and we'll see that in the pattern as we go through it. Okay, but let's have a look at the feminine nouns first. Again, you're going to look at the end of the stem, so remove that nominative singular ending. And here is the first sort of subcategory of the first declension. All right, these are all words where the stem ends in one of 3 letters. Okay, epsilon, iota, or rho. Now, from that last slide that we looked at, there were a number of words there, and they all ended in different letters to end the stem. But if the stem ends in one of those three letters, epsilon, iota, or rho, it will follow this pattern. Okay, and I've highlighted the endings in red. So notice this word, hemera. If you take off the ending there, the nominative singular ending, and you're left with the stem ends in rho, and so it falls under this category, the epsilon, iota, or rho category. Nominative singular then is an alpha, and you will notice with this category here, there are alphas going throughout the entire singular pattern. Okay, that's kind of the distinguishing feature of this particular category of first declension nouns. Okay, you've got that consistent vowel throughout the singular, which is an alpha. So nominative singular, hemera, the alpha. Then the genitive singular will turn into an alpha sigma for your ending. Okay, and that's how you know this is a genitive singular with that alpha sigma ending. So hemeras is genitive singular of a day. Then the dative singular, similar to the second declension, it has an iota subscript. And if you remember from chapter 4, the iota subscript is a vital part of the spelling. You need to have that in there in a quiz or a test. But we don't pronounce this. This is kind of like a silent E in English. And so this one is pronounced simply hemera. It's pronounced exactly the same way as the nominative singular, but it's slightly different because it has the iota subscript, just that tiny little iota under the alpha. Okay, but that's what tells you that it's dative, and so this is now 2 a day. And the last one there in that column, the accusative singular, is alpha nu. So you have hemeran, and this is the object form, day. Now I told you that that the singular is the only place where you have a variation. All right, so these next endings, the plural endings, are going to be consistent throughout all of the first declension. Okay, learn these 4 endings and you've got the plurals for the entire first declension. So let's look at these plural endings. First of all, the nominative plural. The ending is alpha iota. So for this word, it is hemerai, days. Then the genitive plural, if you remember from the discussion in chapter 4, the genitive plural ending is always going to be omega nu, no matter what. Okay, and so here you see, even though we switched from second declension to first declension, that genitive plural ending is still the same. It's just omega nu. Okay, so hemeron, now instead of a day, it's of days, plural. Then the dative plural, hemerais, alpha iota sigma, 2 days. And then the accusative plural, hemeras, okay, alpha sigma, days. Couple of things on this. If you know your second declension endings really well, you will be able to see that, this kind of takes that same sort of pattern. Okay, in the second declension, the nominative plural was omicron iota, and here it's alpha iota. Okay, skip over the genitive plural, it's exactly the same. Then in the dative plural, in the second declension, it was omicron iota sigma, and here in the first declension, it's alpha iota sigma. Then the accusative in the second declension was omicron upsilon sigma. And here you have an alpha. Instead of a diphthong, it is now just alpha, but alpha sigma. All right, so the pattern kind of holds. Okay, you're just substituting one vowel, that typical the omicron in the second declension, and now we're going to put alphas in there. Okay, so that kind of theme vowel changes, but the pattern pretty much stays the same. Another thing that I should mention, notice there is kind of a potential for confusion here. The genitive singular in this pattern, alpha sigma, is the same as the accusative plural, also alpha sigma. So just be careful with that one. One thing that will tell you for sure is if there is a definite article with this. All right, and we'll go over the definite article in a little bit here. Okay, but yeah, whether it is genitive singular or accusative plural, it should be pretty obvious, with the way that the sentence is constructed. But just the form there is it's ambiguous, okay, as to which one it is. So just be aware of that. It's kind of an unusual thing in Greek. Normally, the Greeks were pretty definite in not wanting that to happen, but for some reason in this pattern, it does. So yeah, just be careful of that one. Okay, that is your pattern for any nouns, first declension nouns that end in epsilon, iota, or rho. The stem ending in epsilon, iota, or rho. Okay, so let's move on to the next kind of chart here. The next first declension pattern. Look at this one here. Look at the stem. If the stem ends either with the letter sigma or with what we call a sibilant sound. Okay, a sibilant sound is that S sound. Okay, it doesn't have to be a sigma. It can be just anything that ends with an S sound. For example, this word doxa. Okay, it does not end with a sigma. It ends with a xi, but the xi has that S sound kind of as part of it, right? It's a KS sound. So this is still considered in this chart. So let's look at this one. The nominative singular, it looks exactly the same as hemera. Okay, you've got the alpha ending there, so that looks nice and familiar. But then notice the genitive singular will change. Okay, instead of an alpha sigma for the genitive, the vowel has changed. Now instead of an alpha, we have an eta. Before anybody asks, no, I don't know why this happens. Okay, and yeah, every single year, we're left wondering, why did they do this? I don't know. Okay, they just decided somehow that they didn't want alphas going all the way through. Greek, we're never going to make things consistent or easy, and so here we're going to change that theme vowel only for these words, okay, that end in an S or a sigma or an S sound. Fortunately, there are not too many of these words, okay, but you still have to learn this weird pattern. So anyway, yeah, the ending is the same. You just change that vowel from an alpha to an eta. Okay, so doxase, of glory. This word doxa, like the song, the doxology. Okay, doxology is you're pronouncing words of glory. You're giving words of glory to God. Okay, and so yeah, this word means glory. Doxa, nominative singular, glory, genitive singular, doxase, of glory. Then dative singular, again you have the iota subscript there. Notice that. That might be a little bit hard to see on the eta, but there is one there, kind of tucked under that first leg of the eta. So this one is doxe. Again, you don't pronounce the eta, I mean the iota subscript, you just pronounce the eta. Okay, this one means to glory. And then doxon, glory. Okay, accusative singular, it goes back, it kind of reverts back to that alpha. So be careful with that one, okay? It changes in the genitive and dative, but then it goes back to the alpha in the accusative. Again, thankfully, there aren't very many of these words. Okay, this is by far the least common of the sort of subcategories of the first declension. Okay, so hopefully that's not too confusing. Just remember that the two middle forms there in the sigma sound subcategory are etas, and then the two outer forms, nominative and accusative, are alphas. But then look at the plurals. Okay, the exact same plural endings as before. I'll go back to hemera, and you can see hemerai, hemeron, hemerais, hemeras. And then those endings are the exact same for doxa. Okay, just doxai, doxon, doxais, doxas. Only change is in the singular, the plurals stay the same. All right, if you've got the sigma sound subcategory down, let's move on then. Now, these endings here, this category, this is if the stem ends in any other letter than the first two categories. So first category you had was epsilon, iota, or rho. The second category was either the letter sigma or a sigma sound. If the stem ends in any other letter other than those, then it falls into this one. All right, this is sort of the catch-all for the rest of the first declension. And again, the variation is going to be in the singular, so let's look at those. Phone, it means voice or sound. If you drop off the eta, we're left with a nu, and sure enough, nu is not epsilon, iota, or rho. Nu does not make an S sound, so it falls into this category. And this one, it is pretty much the opposite of the first category, hemera. Okay. With this one, all of your theme vowels in the singular are going to be etas. All right. For the first category, they were all alphas. Then for the second category, the sigmas, there you had a combination of alphas and etas. Here, it's only going to be eta. Okay. So nominative singular is phone, voice. Genitive singular is phones, eta sigma, of a voice. Then dative singular, eta with an iota subscript, phone, to a voice. And then the accusative singular, phonein, a voice. And then have a look at the plurals. If you've gotten the plural forms from the first two categories down, then these ones are really easy, right? Okay, phonai, voices, nominative plural. Genitive plural, always, 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 omega nu, no matter what. Okay, so phonon. Then dative plural, phonais, and accusative plural, phonos. Now those three categories are for the feminine nouns. All right, so once again, epsilon, iota, or rho, in the singular, you're going to have alphas going throughout that entire pattern. Okay, and notice the variation. So genitive singular has alpha sigma, dative singular has alpha with an iota subscript, and then accusative singular has alpha nu. Going on to the next pattern here, you're going to have alpha in the nominative singular and alpha also in the accusative singular. Okay, alpha nu there. Then in the two middle cases, genitive and dative, they're going to that vowel is going to change to an eta. And on this one, the last one, any other letter ending the stem, you're going to have etas throughout the whole pattern. All right, hopefully that's clear enough. And you can start memorizing these forms here. All right, certainly take some time to memorize the plural. Okay, get those backwards and forwards. Know those really well because, again, those are common to all first declension words. Moving on, let's go now to masculine first declension words. Okay, these are first declension, and yeah, they're the masculine first declension. But actually, let's talk about the plural endings. Okay, again, no matter which one of these categories a word falls into, nominative plural is always going to be that, alpha, iota. As long as it's first declension, it's always going to be that. Okay, whatever the stem ends in. Genitive plural will always be omega nu, dative plural alpha, iota, sigma, and accusative plural alpha, sigma. Okay, only in the singular do you have a variation. All right, here are the masculine nouns of the first declension. Again, we're going to split these up into a couple of categories. If the stem ends in one of those three magic letters, okay, epsilon, iota, or rho, once again, you're going to have alphas going throughout the singular. But watch out, okay? The nominative singular, first of all, ends in alpha sigma instead of just alpha. All right, but if the stem ends in one of those letters, you're going to have an alpha there. Then notice the genitive singular. Okay, ne'ani'u, that is not a misprint. Alright, I am quite vulnerable to making typos on these slides, but this one is not a mistake. Alright, this one is Omicron Upsilon, and I've put a note down on the bottom of this slide. Okay, the masculine first declension nouns kind of borrow, they reach over into the second declension that we just learned last time, and it pulls out the genitive singular and it sticks it onto here. Okay, so even though it is a first declension noun, it has the same ending in the genitive singular as the second declension. Why does this happen? I'm not exactly sure, but it looks like the Greeks maybe had a form chart like this laid out, and they noticed that there was a problem. Okay, that if we're setting up our pattern this way, the nominative singular is alpha sigma, and if you followed the same rule as the feminine words, the genitive singular ending would also be alpha sigma. Okay, and they didn't want that. So to signal that this is a masculine first declension noun, and to avoid that kind of those two forms clashing, okay, they took the genitive singular from the second declension, so it's Omicron Upsilon. Only in the masculine nouns of the first declension does this happen. Then the dative singular, we go back to the familiar pattern. It is an alpha and it has an iota subscript, okay, because it is first declension. And then the accusative singular, alpha nu, same as before. Okay, the feminine epsilon, iota, or rho category. So there is a difference between masculine and feminine words in the first declension, but those differences only happen in the nominative singular and the genitive singular. Now before I had made the observation that with a word like hemera, it's the genitive singular and the accusative plural that look the same. Okay. And in this one here, it's the nominative singular and the accusative plural that looks the same. And I don't know why they didn't have a problem with this. Okay, they had enough of a problem that they borrowed the form from the genitive singular, but they didn't have enough of a problem to change the accusative plural form. So I don't know what. I don't know why. Okay. But yeah, for some reason, just that genitive singular offended their sensibilities, so they went and cheated and took the second declension form. Otherwise, all of the plural forms, once again, it doesn't matter that these are masculine first declension nouns. As long as it is a first declension, those plural endings are going to be the same. Okay, alpha iota for the nominative plural, omega nu for genitive plural, alpha iota sigma for dative plural, and alpha sigma for accusative plural. All right, so just take note of those two exceptions to the pattern. Otherwise, this word works exactly the same as a word like hemera, the first chart that we worked with. Okay, and yes, neanias means young man or a youth. The last category, notice with this one, this is the stem ends in anything other than epsilon, iota, or rho. Okay, there is not that middle category with the masculine nouns, stems ending in either sigma or an S sound. All right, that category has been dropped. Apparently, there are no masculine first declension words that end in that have the stems ending in a sigma or a sigma sound. Okay, they're just epsilon, iota, or rho, and then they take that alpha chart. And if they end in anything else, then they take this chart. Okay, for example, mathetes, tau is the end of the stem, and it is not epsilon, iota, or rho. And so it falls into this. And like the feminine, we're going to have etas going throughout the singular. So the nominative singular is eta sigma. Genitive singular, just like before with neanias, we're going to reach into the second declension, borrow their ending for the genitive singular, and you're left with omicron upsilon. Okay, mathe 2. The dative singular, again, has an iota subscript. In this chart, it is an eta with an iota subscript. Okay, so dative singular mathete to a disciple, and then the accusative singular eta nu mathetein. Going over to the plural, just as before, there is no difference with these endings. Okay, it's still a first declension noun, so the endings are I for the nominative plural, own genitive plural, eis dative plural, and as accusative plural. Okay, at the bottom there, I made the note that there is no S sound category. Okay, just those two, epsilon, iota, or rho, or anything else. Now, learn these noun patterns very well. There are 5 of the subcategories in the first declension. Okay, 3 in the feminine, epsilon, iota, or rho, S or sigma sound, and anything else. Okay, those are 3 categories in the feminine. In the masculine, you have 2. Okay, epsilon, iota, or rho, and anything else. So basically 5 of these subcategories that you can learn. Once you have this down very well, and if you are remembering, if you're able to remember the second declension endings from chapter 4, we are ready to move on then with what we call the Greek definite article. Okay, the definite article is a fancy way of saying the word the. Okay, the chair, the star, the book, any one of those. Okay, the word the is a definite article. It makes the noun idea again more definite or concrete. Okay, we're not talking about just any book. We're not just talking about a book. We're talking about the book. Okay, and so it gives a certain it gives a level of certainty, a letter of definition. Okay, to this. To kind of the noun idea. If you want to, I tell people this, okay, if you want to tell anyone who, hears that you're taking Greek and they're like, well, I hear Greek is really hard, how hard can it be? Well, tell them, okay, there are 24 ways to say the in Greek. Okay, and you have to know exactly when to use each one of those 24 forms. Now that sounds like a lot, it sounds really scary, but really all it is, it's simply you have three genders, right? Masculine, feminine, and neuter. Each of those 3 genders then has 4 forms for the singular, in that they have nominative, genitive, dative, accusative forms. And we have to do that for the singular. Then the plural forms have nominative, genitive, dative, accusative forms. Okay, so for each of the cases, you have 4 forms. Then for singular and plural, okay, you have 4 forms each. That gives you 8 forms. And then you have to do all of those 8 forms for masculine, feminine, and neuter, okay, which gives you 24. So really, you've learned pretty much all of these forms. Okay, once you know the second declension nouns and the first declension nouns, you pretty much have all of the endings for the definite article. There are a couple of exceptions, but I'll point those out to you, and they're not super significant. Okay, one thing about this chart, okay, I said before there are 3 genders, the 3 Greek genders, masculine, feminine, and neuter. The masculine and the neuter patterns will follow the second declension. Okay, the masculine forms, the typical forms that we associate with the second declension, and the neuter will follow the same pattern as that neuter subcategory. Okay, nominative and accusative forms are the same, always in the neuter. And then the genitive and dative forms look like the masculine. When we go to the feminine forms, that's where we change. Okay, masculine and neuter use second declension patterns that we learned in chapter 4. The feminine follows the first declension patterns that we learned in this chapter. All right, so let's look at this chart then. And one more thing, genitive plural forms all end in omega nu, so that's really nice. So here is your full form chart for the entire definite article. All right, all 24 forms of the word the in Greek. Now I've put the three Greek genders up across the top, so masculine, feminine, and neuter. Then down below that in the columns, we have the singular first, nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative, and then under that the plurals. So there are 8 forms total in each column, and those are your genders. So let's look at the first one there on the left side. These are the masculine forms. And again, these follow the second declension forms in Chapter 4. Right off the bat, there is an exception. All right, so if you look at the second declension endings, you'll generally be able to recognize the endings in the chart. But right there in the nominative singular, there's a difference. Your second declension nominative singular ending is typically omicron sigma, but here it's just an omicron, and there is a rough breathing mark over that. Okay, that is not a typo. That is actually what the nominative singular form of the definite article the looks like. Okay, then right off the bat, look at the genitive singular. Now, there is a major difference between the nominative singular and the genitive singular. Okay, the nominative singular has a rough breathing mark. The genitive singular begins with the letter tau. But then the genitive singular takes the ending of the second declension genitive singular. Okay, omicron upsilon. And so it's 2. Genitive singular definite article. Okay, 2. Then your dative singular is the tau, and then the ending is an omega with an iota subscript, to. And then the accusative is ton, tau, omicron, nu. Once again, all of these are ways of saying the. Okay, it just depends on how this is being used in a sentence. In the plurals, now, still with the masculine, the nominative plural looks a lot like the nominative singular. It has a rough breathing mark. Okay, and then it looks like the ending for the nominative plural for the second declension. Okay, omicron iota, but with the rough breathing mark, it's pronounced hoi. So the nominative in the masculine, both the singular and the plural, has a rough breathing mark over it, not a tau. Okay, then the genitive, we go back to the tau. So genitive ending is always omega nu, so it's tone. Dative, second declension ending, omicron iota sigma, so tois. And accusative, omicron upsilon sigma, tus. Let's skip over the feminine forms for now, because the neuter forms also use the second declension pattern. Again, this is from Chapter 4, and it will use that sort of neuter subcategory. In the neuter, the nominative does have a tau. If you remember from the masculine, did not, but the neuter does. So it's ta, tau, omicron. And then, as I said in the second declension chapter, in the neuter, the nominative and accusative forms are always the same. No matter what pattern we're using, whether it's a noun or an adjective or a definite article, the nominative and accusative forms are always the same in both the singular and the plural. So here in the singular, nominative singular is ta, and you notice the accusative singular is the same, tau, omicron. Now the two middle forms, the genitive and the dative, will look identical to the masculine. So the genitive tu and the dative to with an iota subscript. Going to the neuter plurals now, again the nominative has a tau, so it's ta. It's basically pronounced the same as the singular, but it's tau alpha instead of tau omicron. And then your accusative plural is going to be the same, tau alpha, okay, ta. Genitive and dative forms there are going to be the same as the masculine, tone and tois. Right, so those are your neuter forms. considerably less to learn. If you learn the masculine, then it's just a matter of learning the nominative and accusative, which are the same as each other. Now let's go to the middle column that we skipped over before, the feminine forms. These are based on the first declension that you've just learned. Okay, if you want to think of it in this manner, you can think of it as the stem is just a tau. A tau is not an epsilon, iota, or rho. It is also not an S or a sigma letter or an S sound. So it follows the same pattern as like phone, all right, any other letter category. And so you're going to have etas going throughout the singulars. Notice in the feminine nominative singular, it's like the masculine nominative singular in that it has a rough breathing mark in the nominative. So it's pronounced hey, simply the letter eta with a rough breathing mark on it, hey. Like the masculine, we're switching in the genitive singular to a tau, and so it's tau eta sigma, tace. The dative singular is tau eta with an iota subscript, te. And the accusative singular, tau eta nu, tain. Going to the plurals of the feminine, the nominative feminine plural is like the nominative feminine singular. It has a rough breathing mark on it. It is alpha iota with a rough breathing mark, so it's pronounced high. The genitive feminine plural looks exactly like the masculine and the neuter. Okay, we still are using the omega nu, and so this is tau omega nu, tone. Then the dative, tau alpha iota sigma, tice. Tice. And then the accusative feminine plural, tau alpha sigma, tas. All right, look at the feminine plurals. Okay, those again are the first declension plural endings. Okay, I, own, ice, os, but using kind of the definite article pattern. Okay, rough breathing mark in the nominative, then taus everywhere else. High, tone, tice, and tas. Have a look at this chart and know this chart very well. Going forward, we're pretty much going to assume that you know this. So take some time with this one to really memorize this and get to know it well. But again, all of the endings should be pretty familiar to you. Okay, the only thing to know is when do we use a rough breathing mark? Okay, when do we switch to the taus? In the masculine and feminine, the nominative, both the singular and the plural, have rough breathing marks. Every other spot has a tau. All right, the masculine nominative singular looks a little bit different from the typical ending that you would expect. Also, the neuter nominative singular and accusative singular look a little bit different. Okay, if you look at the neuter chart from chapter 4, those endings look slightly different. It's omicron nu is the ending in the neuter nouns, whereas in the definite article it's simply an omicron. Okay, ta. But everywhere else, it should be pretty familiar. Okay, all of those endings are just second declension endings for the masculine and neuter, and first declension endings for the feminine. Moving on then from the forms of the definite article, let's go to what are some ways that you use this, or what are some things that we need to keep in mind when we're using the definite article. There are some rules, and they are pretty important to know. So let's take a look at some of these. Okay, the main thing that you have to remember, the definite article must match its noun. Okay, the definite article is generally used in conjunction with a noun. It's the something. right? The computer, the car, the book, the scriptures. Okay, whatever noun this article is matched up with, it must match the definite article in gender, number, and case. Those are the three major categories that every noun falls into. Okay, and so the definite article has all of those different forms. That's why there are 24 forms of the definite article. Okay, and they must match up with the noun in gender, number, and case. So let's take a look at an example here. I've put here the word adelphu. Okay, adelphu is a second declension noun. It is a masculine singular genitive. Okay, gender is masculine, number is singular, and then case is genitive. Okay, now if you want to say the brother, or of the brother, okay, because it's genitive, what form of the definite article are you going to use? Okay, you have to go back to the chart of the definite article, and you have to find the form of the definite article that is then masculine singular genitive. Okay, if you want to have a look at that, here is the chart again. So masculine singular genitive is this form right here, okay, to, and so there you have it. Okay, to is the masculine singular genitive. And so if you want to say of the brother, okay, first of all it's genitive, so it's of. That's where you get the of. And then to is a form of the. And then adelphu means brother. Okay, so to adelphu is of the brother. Let's go to another couple of examples. Okay, the word phoni. Phoni. This word is a feminine word. The number is plural now, and the case is nominative. Which is the form of the definite article that matches that feminine, plural, nominative? Okay, here we have it, right? High. High is the definite article for the feminine, plural, nominative. So to say the voices, high phoni. Last example, okay, to the days. To implies that it's going to be dative. So the days, then the word days is hemerais. Hemerais is gender feminine, number plural, case dative. The definite article then must match up with that. Feminine, plural, dative, which is tais. Tais hemerais then, to, because it's dative, you get the to the days. Alright, that's a long-winded way of saying that, yeah, again, the very first point here. The definite article has to match its noun, whatever noun it's corresponding with, the something, whatever that something is. Those two elements have to match up in gender, number, and case. Alright, simple stuff, right? In all of these, you just look at the ending, and you match up the ending of the definite article with the ending of the noun. Easy stuff. Okay, to adelphu, high phoni, tais hemerais. Unfortunately, it's not quite that easy, or it's not always going to be that easy. As I said before, the definite article and its corresponding noun has to match in the gender, number, and case, but not necessarily in the endings. Okay, this previous slide here, it just happened to be a nice coincidence that the endings all matched up. Okay, the endings do not always have to match up. For example, the word hadas, and here's where you get a problem. Okay, the definite article is always standard. Okay, masculine always uses second declension endings, neuter always uses second declension endings, feminine always uses first declension endings, but not all feminine words are first declension. Here's an example. Hadas is a feminine second declension noun. Okay, so now we have a problem. Okay, your definite, because what's going to happen here is the definite article endings are not going to match up with the noun ending, basically. Okay, so hadus, look at the next point there. Hadus is feminine plural accusative. All right, when you go to match a definite article with this, you're not just going to look at the ending, okay? Because the definite article endings take first declension endings, okay? Even though hadus is a second declension noun. So there you're going to have a mismatch, all right? Notice here the correct definite article for this noun, hadus, is tas. Okay, that tas is the feminine plural accusative definite article. So notice here the endings do not match. Okay, tas, hadus. And you get that mismatch because you have this weird thing happening where, yeah, you have a handful of these words, a few dozen, I think, of these words that are feminine second declension. Another problem, the mirror image problem, happens when you have masculine words that are first declension. The masculine definite article takes second declension endings, okay, and that is always true. The definite article is always going to take second declension endings. It doesn't care what the noun is doing. But in this case, the noun is a masculine first declension noun. Okay, mathetein is the accusative singular of mathetes. Okay, this is a masculine singular accusative, so you have to find the form on the definite article chart, which is masculine singular accusative. That form is ton, tau omicron nu, not tau eta nu. So here again, you have a mismatch. Okay. This last form here is an example of a first declension word, but that's going to have a mismatched ending. Okay, and the reason for that is that hemera, if you recall, this is a feminine first declension word, but the form of it is going to follow the subcategory of feminine first declension words that end in, their stems end in epsilon, iota, or rho. All right, so hemera, the stem ends in rho. Therefore, if you remember, all of those singular forms are going to have alphas as the theme vowel. All right, and so your feminine singular dative form of this particular noun is going to be alpha with the iota subscript, pronounced hemera. However, when we go to the definite article is still first declension, but this one takes a different subcategory of the first declensions. This one is the any other letter subcategory, and so instead of alphas going throughout as the theme vowel, this one has etas going throughout as the theme vowel, okay, for the definite article, because the stem ends in tau instead of epsilon, iota, or rho. So notice the definite article here is tau eta with an iota subscript, not tau alpha with an iota subscript. Okay, there's no such form as that, actually. And so the definite article is te, and then the noun is hemera. They both have iota subscripts, but the vowel is different. That kind of theme vowel is different. Okay, so those are three things that can happen. Okay, you can have a mismatch in the declension pattern, okay, and the noun. Okay, so you can have a feminine second declension or a masculine first declension, which means that then you're going to have a definite article that doesn't match. Or you could have, even within the feminine kind of category, then you're going to have some of these that don't match up because there are several of these subcategories of feminine first declension words. All right, now I'm not going to have you write Greek, and so that's not going to be quite as much of a concern, but just be aware of it. You know, you're going to be reading along, and just be aware that, yeah, sometimes you might be reading, and you may have a a definite article that does not match up with the ending of its noun, but those two still go together. And that's a really good way to tell, about some of these tricky things. Okay, for example, the word hadus. If it doesn't have a definite article, there's no way that you will know that it is actually a feminine second declension noun. If you see the definite article with it, then that makes it really easy to tell. Okay, with hadus, that first example that we had. Tas hadus is what you would read, and then you can say, oh, okay, hadus is with tas. Tas is the feminine form of the definite article, therefore hadus has to be a feminine word. All right, yeah, if you have any questions on this, again, save it for next week, and I will try and schedule a face-to-face meeting where you can ask me these questions and any others that you might have had over the course of this quarter. The last category of words here, we're going to move on now from nouns and definite articles, and this is an introduction to a category of words called prepositions. Now, prepositions will end up getting a lot more complicated, but for the first bit here, the book does a good job of keeping it pretty simple. Okay, but a preposition is a type of word that states a relationship between two words in a sentence. Now, those words could be two nouns. Those words could be like a noun and a verb. Okay, it could be pretty much any two nouns in a sentence, and generally a prepositional phrase will be just like a description. Okay, it'll give you more of a description of either a noun or a verb. The man. Well, that's not super interesting. Okay, just talking about the man. Okay, well, which man is it? It's the man between the trees. Okay, between in that sentence is a preposition. Okay, it's telling you that there is a relationship between the man and the trees. And it also describes something a little bit more about the man. Okay, another example would be something like Jesus said to the woman. Okay, Jesus said to the Samaritan woman. Okay, to the woman or to the Samaritan woman is a prepositional phrase. Okay, to is a preposition. And therefore, to the woman is a prepositional phrase, and it tells you something a bit more about said. Okay, this one tells you a bit more about the verb. Jesus said, well, okay, that's great, okay, but we don't know a whole lot more. Well, let's fill that in a little bit more. Jesus said to the woman. Okay, well, now we know who Jesus was talking to. So prepositional phrases, again, yeah, they state a relationship between two words, and they describe a bit more about what is happening in the sentence. In English, here are some examples of prepositions. Between, above, according to, in, at, or with. All of those are prepositions. All right. Now, prepositions will always appear in prepositional phrases. You cannot have a preposition just standing by itself. Okay. I would never say just the word above. Okay, that doesn't mean anything, right? You have to have above something or above someone, above the clouds, above the city. Yeah, that is the prepositional phrase. A preposition plus some kind of substantive, okay, some kind of a thing some kind of word that's describing something. That something is what we call the object of the preposition. In these examples, I have underlined the object of the preposition. Okay, both of these are prepositional phrases, and there's the object. Okay, so the preposition is between. The object of the preposition is the trees. Okay, between the trees. Next one, according to Matthew. The preposition is according to. In English, it's two words. In Greek, this would just be one word. But in English, we do it with two words. Okay, according to, and then the object of the preposition is Matthew. Now, in Greek, prepositions are always associated with, or they always take their objects in a certain case. All right, and there are prepositions that take objects in one case. There are also prepositions that take objects in multiple cases. And with those are a bother because each case gives a slightly different meaning to the preposition. Okay, but fortunately, these first 4 prepositions that we are going to learn take their objects in only one case. So you can basically think of these prepositions just as vocabulary words. All right, let's go through these. The first one is apa. Apa. It is alpha with a smooth breathing mark, then P and omicron. Apa. This preposition always takes its object in the genitive case. Okay, so anytime you see the preposition apa, what follows it then is going to be the preposition, and that will always be in the genitive. Fortunately in Greek, the preposition always follows directly after the object of the preposition always follows directly after the preposition. Okay, normally Greek jumbles all the words up. Okay, they take the words all out of order. But this is one exception. Okay, the preposition will never be separated from its object. It will always be preposition, then object of the preposition. Right. What follows can have the definite article, but it doesn't need to have it. But a lot of times, yeah, it will have the definite article with it. So a lot of times it'll be preposition, definite article, object. Okay, and the definite article and the object must agree in gender, number, and case. Okay, but yeah, you don't always have to have the definite article, and it can just be a preposition and a noun, or a preposition and a pronoun, or something like that. Okay, but let's look at some of these. I have put in the definite article just to give you a bit more practice in seeing this. Okay, so apa, it always takes a genitive, and this preposition means from or away from. So apa tes synagoges. Tes synagoges is genitive singular. Okay, and this word is in your vocabulary for this chapter. It means the synagogue. Okay, so apa tes synagoges, away from the synagogue. Something that I need to mention is that with prepositions, the preposition always overrides the case usage. Okay, apa takes the genitive, and so this will always just mean from. It doesn't mean away from of the synagogue. Okay, which is what the normal genitive use is. Okay, but in this case, the preposition overrides that normal genitive use. Instead of now being a possessive form of synagogue, okay, of the synagogue, it's simply away from the synagogue. Okay, so when you have those like a genitive or dative that you translate like an extra word into English, of or to or by, when it's used in a prepositional phrase, don't translate that case usage. Okay, it just becomes the object of the preposition. Away from the synagogue. The next preposition is ek. Ek always takes the genitive. Sometimes you will see this as x with a xi. That happens when the next word begins with, I think, a vowel. Okay, if the object of the preposition begins with a vowel, that kappa will turn into a xi. Okay, and it'll turn into x. But the standard form is ek, and this means out of or from. So ek tu oiku. Okay, tu oiku is the genitive form of house. And so ek tu oiku is out of the house or from the house. When you are translating these, prepositions, they have more than one meaning. They're a little bit slippery to translate into English. And so try a few of these meanings and, it should be clear. The sentences that we're going to be translating are simple enough that a lot of times it won't even matter which one you translate, whether you translate it out of or from. All right, and as long as it makes sense, I will take it. Okay, you won't miss anything. As long as you just read the sentence, and as long as it makes sense, then yeah, you're fine with either one, out of or from. Next preposition is en. This one should be easy to memorize. Okay, en N always takes the dative. This is different from the previous two. Okay, the appa and ek took the genitive. N always takes the dative. And this one means in. Okay, so yeah, N means in. Also can mean something like at or among. So N te hado. Te hado is the dative form. And notice, remember, this one again is the feminine second declension, which is why the definite article and the noun don't match up in the ending. But en te hado is simply in the road. Again, you don't want to translate this in to the road. Okay, don't translate the dative case use there to. It's simply in the road. Okay, the n overrides the dative, and it just takes its object in the dative. Last one is ace. Ace takes its object in the accusative case, and this means into, to, or toward. Very similar to n, and actually some authors, I think, in the New Testament use these almost interchangeably. Okay, but most of the time, n suggests like no motion. Okay, just something is sitting in something, or at, like in a field or at a field. Okay, there's no motion in or out of the field. It's just in. Whereas ace has the connotation of movement toward or into. Okay, movement like proceeding into something. Okay, so that's ace. Ace tein cardion. Tein cardion is the accusative singular form. And so ace tein cardion means into the heart. All right, so those are prepositions, prepositional phrases, and how you use them. Okay, once again, Greek will always have prepositions that take their objects in a certain case. Here, you will never see appa with its preposition with its object in the accusative case. Okay, if you see appa and then there's some word in the accusative, it means that you need to go and look for the object someplace else. Okay, appa always takes its object in the genitive, whereas n always takes it in the dative. Ace is always in the accusative. All right, now let's go over some issues with the prepositions. Okay, and I really mentioned these already as we were discussing the prepositional phrases. Okay, but yeah, the preposition always takes precedence over the case. Okay, whatever the standard case usage is, it becomes you don't use it when something is in a prepositional phrase. Okay, tu oiku is the genitive, and normally you would translate that of the house. But when you say appa tu oiku, you don't say of the house anymore. It's away from the house. Okay, not away from of the house. And that's pretty obvious because, yeah, away from of the house doesn't really mean anything. But that's just to clarify, okay, yeah, why is that? Well, yeah, it's because it's part of the prepositional phrase. All right, now the other thing that I did mention, yeah, prepositions, they're a little bit difficult to kind of pin down. Okay, they have a lot of different meanings, and yeah, as we're translating, most of the time those kind of basic meanings that I gave you. Okay, appa is away from, ek is out of, n is in, and ace is into. Okay, those are kind of the basic meanings, but in certain contexts you may need to try a few of the options. Okay. But for right now, yeah, just start getting familiar with these and how you use them. I won't be too concerned with those kinds of shades of meaning that these things can have. Okay, so en te hado can mean in the road, can also mean at the road, by the road, or with the road. Okay, lots of different ways to translate that one word en. But kind of the basic meaning that it will be most of the time is going to be in. All right, now at this point, let's go through some of these practice sentences and look at, how would you do these? Okay, and I'll work through a few of these with you, and look at, attached to your email, you'll have the whole assignment. But we can go through these, and you can fill these out, and you'll be done with a few of these practice sentences, at least at the beginning. Okay, so the first one, luo ton dulon en te ecclesia. Right off the bat, notice there is a prepositional phrase here, what we just got done talking about. The word en is your preposition, and then whatever immediately follows it is going to be the object of the preposition. So en takes the dative case, and that's what you see there. Okay, but anyway, let's get into these words. The first thing that you want to do when you see a sentence like this is let's get all of the forms of the words. All right, as you get more familiar with the language, this will become more like second nature, but for right now, let's have a look at all of these, look at each word as it comes, and we'll get everything that we know about it. Okay, so the first word there, luo, this is the verb. Okay, it's a present tense verb. There's no sigma on the end of the stem there. From chapter 3, you'll know how to tell the difference between a present and a future. The ending there, the omega on the end, is a first person singular. Okay, so this is present tense, it is first person, and it is singular. Once you've got that, okay, that's your verb, let's work on everything else. Okay, so the definite article ton is a masculine, it is singular, and it's accusative. Really nicely, the very next word, dulon, the endings do match up here, but indeed this is also a masculine singular accusative word. It's a noun in the second declension. And so ton, dulon are together. Okay, there's your definite article and noun. As I said before, en is a preposition. It always takes the dative case. Te is the definite article. It is feminine, singular, and dative. So there's your dative that goes with en. And then ecclesia, it is a noun. It's a first declension noun that you will learn in this chapter. The vocab comes in this chapter. And it is a feminine, singular, dative, just like the definite article. All right, now with all of this information, we can write out a rough sort of translation. Okay, first thing, look at the verb. Okay, that is a first person singular verb, and so we're going to get our subject out of that verb. Okay, the first person singular of luo simply means I loose. You can get the I because it's first person singular. There is no nominative in this sentence, therefore you need to get your subject from the verb. Okay, so first person singular I, luo means loose. Ton dulon is the slave. All right, you should know that one from chapter 4. Servant or slave is dulon. And then en te ecclesia. Ecclesia is the word for church. In a more generic sense, it means assembly or gathering. And so you can have a totally secular ecclesia. Okay, just if you have a group of people who come together and they come together for fellowship or to make a decision or anything else. Okay, you have an ecclesia. But this became, in Christian circles, this became known as an assembly for a certain purpose, that is, to fellowship together and also worship God. Okay, so this ecclesia means the church. And so en te ecclesia means in the church. So your sort of basic sentence here is, I loose the slave. Okay, luo ton dulon. Then en te ecclesia tells you a bit more about the slave and also about the loosing. Okay, where did this loosing of the slave happen? I loose the slave in the church. Okay, and then so the last thing that you need to do is just write out a final translation, and there you have it. Okay. I will only be grading you on the final translation, but I find that for many students it's very helpful to write out all of that information. Okay, so yeah, I recommend, at least in these first few chapters that we are learning about translating Greek sentences, that yeah, try and get as much of that information about each word as you can. Okay, it will certainly help you and make it a lot more clear. Once you write all of that stuff out, then the sentence actually becomes pretty easy to put together. It's just a matter of, I mean, the difficulty of Greek is remembering all that information, okay, for each word, and you have 3, 4, 5 points sometimes. All right, so there's your first sentence. I loose the slave in the church. All right, let's have a look at the next sentence then. This is actually number 2 on the assignment. Blepamen tous oikous ton neanion. All right, I'll say that again. Blepamen tous oikous ton neanion. So what's the first thing that we're going to do? Let's write out all of the information that we can find about each word. Okay, first word is blepamen. This is a verb. It comes from the word I see, blepo. We look at this, and there is no sigma or sigma change at the end of the stem, so this is a present. Look at the ending, amen. That ending is a first-person plural from chapter 3. The next word there is tous. This is a definite article. The gender is masculine. The number is plural. And the case is accusative. This matches up very nicely with the very next word, which is a noun, a second declension noun. And this is also masculine plural accusative. So those two words go together. Okay, tous oikous. Your next word is tone. This is back to the definite article, okay, another definite article. And this one is masculine. And I only know that because of the noun that follows it, okay, but that alone could be masculine, feminine, or neuter. It is, in fact, a genitive plural. That omega nu ending tells you that this is genitive plural. And nicely enough, it matches up with the next word. Okay, neon is a first declension noun. It is a masculine first declension, but that confusion doesn't play into this because it is a plural genitive omega nu. Okay, so that's all that we know about these words. Now you can write out a rough translation. Blepamen is from the word I see, but the first person plural is we see. If you look at the other words in this sentence, there are no nominatives, so that is your that's your subject. Okay, we, first person plural verb, we see. Blepo means I see, so blepamen, we see. And tous oikous, accusatives, the houses. And then the ton neon is the young men, but it is genitive, so it's the houses of the young men. All right, this is not a part of a prepositional phrase, so we will keep that genitive use of. And that is pretty much your translation, right? We see. What do we see? We see an accusative subject, which is the houses. We see the houses. And then which houses? Okay, it's the houses that belong to the young men. We see the houses of the young men. All right, next sentence here. Lege ha angelos. Remember those two gammas. You pronounce that nga, like an ng sound. So, lege ha angelos, lagus thanatu, tois stratiotais. Lege ha angelos, lagus thanatu, tois stratiotais. First thing that we want to do, let's figure out all of the forms of the words here. First word is lege. This is a verb. It is a present tense verb. There is no sigma or s sound there to make it future. The ending a is third person singular. Okay. Luo, luace, lua, third person singular. The next word is a definite article. It is the masculine singular nominative definite article. The next word is the word that the definite article is associated with. It is a second declension noun. The ending gives you a masculine singular nominative, just like the definite article. Okay. The angel or the messenger. Either one. The next word is a second declension noun. It is la goose. This form is a masculine plural accusative. Therefore, you know that this one cannot be associated with that definite article, ha. All right, they're both masculine, but the one is plural and also accusative. So ha has to go with angelos, not la goose. Next word, also a second declension noun, thanatu. It is masculine genitive singular. The next word is tois. Tois is a form of the definite article. It is a masculine plural dative definite article. And then the last word, stratiotais. This is a first declension noun. It is one of those weird masculine first declension nouns. It is masculine plural dative, so that definite article does go with stratiotais. All right, even though the form is different, they are both masculine, plural, and dative. All right, there's all of the forms of the words. Let's go ahead and try and get a rough translation of this. Okay. What you're going to want to do first is to get a figure out what the verb and the subject are. Okay. Well, let's just do it here. Okay. Lege is he, she, or it says. Ha angelos is the angel. Lagous is words. Okay, plural. So therefore it's words, plural. Thanatu. Thanatu is from the word death. It is genitive singular, so it's of death. And then tois stratiotais is plural dative. Okay, stratiotais is from the word stratiotes, which is the word for soldier. It's plural, so the soldiers, and it's dative, so to the soldiers. Okay, that's your rough translation, but he, she, it says the angel words of death to the soldiers is not much of a sentence, is it? So let's piece this together and decide how to make this a little bit nicer. First of all, you're going to want to find the verb and the subject. Again, the verb is lege, and I've highlighted it there. Do we have a nominative subject? In the previous two sentences, there wasn't. Again, so you needed to get your subject out of the verb. But in this sentence, you do have a nominative. Okay, there's those two words right after lege. Ha angelos, the angel or the messenger, they're nominative. Okay, and so your verb and subject in this case is not going to be from the verb, it's going to be your nominative. So the angel says, or the angel speaks. This could even be just the messenger speaks. It doesn't have to be a divine, entity. But here, let's just translate it angel. Okay, so the angel says. Now from here, what does the angel say? It's going to be that accusative. Okay, that's going to be your direct object. So the angel says words. And then from there, you can fill in the rest. Okay. The angel says words of death to the soldiers. All right, so that will hopefully be enough to get you at least started on these exercises. Okay. Yeah, there is the a bit of a practice, and fill in the rest of them that will come as an attachment in the email, and you can get that done. Okay. Again, let's meet next week, and if you have any questions, you can bring those. All right. I hope you're having a good week so far. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of a break. I had to take some time to do a wedding and some other things for our church. So yeah, and from what both of you were saying to me in correspondence, it sounds like you could have used a break. So yeah, we took a little break here from Greek, and I hope that was helpful. I did plan for it. I did plan for some time off in the quarter. We don't have to be doing something every single time, and so we're still on track. We're still on schedule. But yeah, this will give you some good practice in the sentences. We're expanding. We're giving a few more of these elements to sentences. So we're starting to make a bit more of a complicated idea. All right, but yeah, I hope you're enjoying this as much as you can and keeping up with it. Again, let's meet next week, and you can bring any questions, any concerns, anything that's particularly difficult. I will be happy to talk about that next week. All right, until then, best wishes, and continue your studies, continue to focus. I know it's hard. It's hard for me to focus on this, but yeah, we'll get through this, and we're I think more than halfway through the quarter, so that's a good thing. All right, take care, and I will see you again. Bye.